Greetings, everyone at the Pali League and the Dhamma Study Group. My name is Ryan Burton. I'm a mindfulness instructor and teacher here in Los Angeles, California. I was invited by Steve Lin to give this short discussion on the 5 hindrances and how they're overcome in meditation. I'm not a scholar, so I can only speak on this subject from a practitioner's point of view. If you have questions about practice, I'm able to answer them. But if it comes to the Pali and to scholarship, I think I have to leave that up to Steve Lin and the other experts on that subject here. But for the hindrances and how they're dealt with in meditation, how they manifest, how they arise, it's definitely something I could get into briefly here and share with everyone here at the end of this Dhamma series on the hindrances. I did my initial training and certification through the Dhammakaya Foundation in 2012. It was a 90-day meditation retreat. It was very difficult. I was a very hungry, naive meditator. At the time, I was young, 19, but it really set me on the path to doing intensive practice and retreats. After my time in Thailand, I went to Pandita Rama in Rangoon, Myanmar, in the Mahasi tradition. I spent some time there, but most of my training is within Thailand. And so today we can get into the hindrances from the point of a meditator dealing with them and how they're overcome, the specific factors of concentration that arise from adequate stillness, from sustained mindfulness, from the power of mindfulness, are able to temporarily suppress and overcome the 5 hindrances, which are, as we know, sense desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, agitation, restlessness, and doubt. So these specific hindrances plague us in meditation and also off the meditation cushion. They are problems in life. Now, to eradicate the hindrances, direct penetrating insight into the unconditioned, into nibbana, enlightenment is what is required to actually eradicate the hindrances. But for those of us that are not touching, reaching, experiencing the unconditioned in meditation, in our daily lives, we are able to temporarily overcome the various hindrances through specific factors of concentration, at least in the context of practice. So for using the object, meditation object as the breath or a visualized object, what's going to happen is that as we direct our attention at that object, we find very quickly that we are not able to do it. Mindfulness will be obstructed. The stream of attention will be misdirected, redirected when we practice meditation at the outset. And even as seasoned practitioners, distraction still occurs. What's distracting the mind stream, what's distracting attention and mindfulness from its object are the various hindrances. So one of the very common hindrances is sense desire. Sense desire is the first hindrance. It's overcome by repeated application. It's called applied attention, vitakka. We're bringing the mind again and again and again to the meditation object. Our, I guess we could say, normal, conditioned way of functioning in the world is to gratify the senses, to be engrossed in the senses, to constantly be on the lookout for sense data. So the direction that meditation is oriented is inward. And the direction that most people have been oriented for the majority of life is outward, looking at the external world, dealing with external circumstances. Our minds are used to being engrossed in the senses. So when we're practicing meditation, we're inherently moving against that specific tendency. So the mind is going to keep going outward. The mind is going to keep attaching to these thoughts of sensuality, keep drifting to these thoughts of sensuality. Now, as we return to the meditation object again and again, over and over, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times in a meditation session or in a meditation retreat, eventually these impeding thoughts of sense desire are overcome, and mindfulness begins to really become established with the object, and an intimacy begins to grow with the breath or with the meditation object. We call that sustained attention, vichara. With sustained attention, mindfulness is not as easily distracted, as easily impeded. And when that groove begins to occur, when we're observing the breath, it's that point where the mind, your attention doesn't want to leave the object. The clarity is beginning to arise, the stillness is beginning to arise, maybe even peace is beginning to arise. So the breath is starting to become pleasurable. And because of that clarity, because of that pleasure that's beginning to arise in the mind actually wants to stay where it is. It wants to stay with the breath. So this staying that is now beginning to happen is what suppresses the hindrance of ill will and agitation. So in meditation, the agitation that could come up, there could be thoughts of a specific nature that make us agitated or frustrated or angry. And it's that actual sustained attention that is able to reduce that and is able to allow the mind to turn away from that. When the sustained attention and applied attention, the vichara and the vitakka, are becoming more so established, what's given rise to next is piti, joy. Piti is a Pali word for joy. So joy is a very buoyant factor of concentration. I describe it as it's a lightness, like a bubbliness, and it directly addresses the hindrance of sloth and torpor. Sloth and torpor in meditation is a serious issue if it's not directly addressed, because it can manifest as sleepiness. And if a person makes that a habit in meditation, then they're not meditating, they are sleeping. The sleepiness can muddy your mindfulness. The sluggishness from the sloth and torpor hindrance gives a kind of muddied perception when trying to apprehend the meditation object. It's a lack of clarity. Imagine if our mindfulness is a magnifying glass, that sloth and torpor, that sluggishness is like gunk on the glass. It actually muddies the clarity of mindfulness. So in meditation, when the factor of joy is arising, when piti is arising, the buoyancy and the lightness of that particular factor addresses and suppresses the lethargy, the sloth and torpor that can be a hindrance. So I also want to emphasize that when I'm talking about these specific terms, people may have the perception that I'm referring to a kind of closed concentration, or that I'm referring to a kind of intense focused concentration, and I'm really not. I'm referring to stillness. I actually think that the word concentration is a misleading term when it comes to meditation. By concentration, we mean collected mindfulness, correct? We mean stillness. That's what we're referring to when we refer to concentration. The mind is being present with the object. It's not that the mind is focused, hard grasping on the object, because that kind of concentration is weak, and any serious practitioner knows that. The concentration that comes from forced attention is inferior by far to the level of stillness, the clarity of mindfulness, the power of mindfulness that comes from stillness, that comes from letting go. So again, imagine you're focusing your attention very deeply, focusing the attention very deeply. How is it going to be possible for joy to suffuse the body? How is it going to be possible for bliss to arise when you're clamping down on the meditation object? It's not what's happening. We're being continuously present with the meditation object. Anytime our mind wanders, we bring it back. Continuous presence, returning again and again and again, gentle, still. But stillness is what gives rise to the factors of concentration. It's what supports the orientation, the direction, and the power of mindfulness. What's happening is that these factors of concentration support mindfulness. They support wholesome attention. Observing the breath or observing a visualized object, once joy begins to arise, there's very strong incentive for the mind to stay where it's being directed. The experience is becoming pleasurable. The breath is becoming more sublime, more peaceful, more refined, more enjoyable, more pleasurable. And it keeps the mind, that allows mindfulness to be strongly supported in staying on the meditation object. The factor, concentration factor, next one is sukha, is happiness. Now, happiness directly overcomes and suppresses the hindrance of restlessness. Restlessness can manifest a couple ways in meditation. I think the most common way that it manifests is a monkey mind. So the inability for the mind to stay in one place, the inability for the mind to be satisfied with the present moment, is going to manifest as the mind just jumping from thought to thought, from internal experience to internal experience, in the same way that a monkey jumps from different branches of a tree. Restlessness also manifests as boredom. You're observing the meditation object, or you're meditating, and there's a sense of boredom. Boredom is really a dissatisfaction with the present moment, and it's the same with this monkey mind. It's not able to really experience the nourishing quality of stillness, of the present moment, of settling down. So for the jhana factor of sukha, of happiness, when sukha has arisen, when it's arising, it's a contentment in the mind. It's not the same, you could say, buoyant bodily feeling that you get from piti. Sometimes piti could actually be overwhelming, but sukha is really a deep, nourishing contentment. It's a very, very deep happiness. And when sukha has arisen, and that pleasure, that contentment with the present moment, with the meditation object is sufficient, it really quells the tendency of the mind to drift and to jump in a variety of directions. Again, the breath is becoming pleasurable. The experience within is increasing in clarity, increasing in power. It's not something that you would want to drift from when the factor is really growing in its intensity and as a factor. So restlessness, agitation, all of that comes from the inability to really not be with things as they are. Now, by being with the breath as it is, by being with the body as it is, by being with the visualized object as it is, that factor of happiness, that factor of sukha, begins to grow. So the other way that restlessness manifests is the inability to sit. It's a more physical, visceral agitation that is arising in the body. I would say it's more energetic, and it's quite intense for some people on meditation retreats when they're doing longer practice and they hit a very major hindrance of restlessness, and it manifests as an inability to sit still. It's just a fidgetiness that's happening that doesn't arise for most people, but if it does, A solution that teachers have shared with me is to do some physical exercise, to actually do some stretching, to do something that will calm the body down, or something that will in turn calm the mind down as well, and to revisit the sit after that if the agitation and restlessness is too strong. So the next concentration factor, the next jhana factor, is ekaggata, and this addresses the hindrance of doubt. Doubt is a very peculiar hindrance because usually doubt is what makes people leave meditation retreats. Doubt is what makes people quit or temporarily quit a practice. I mean, the other hindrances have the possibility of doing that, but it's usually doubt that makes a person leave a meditation retreat, doubt or fear. All these thoughts, is this practice for me? Does this teacher know what he's talking about? Did the Buddha really attain enlightenment? Is it possible to attain Bodhi in this lifetime? But all coming from a place of insecurity, all coming from a place of fickleness. That is overcome by the one-pointedness of powerful mindfulness, of ekaggata, of the mind being completely collected. And it seems that the stableness that comes from the one-pointedness, it can really just break the fickleness and the uncertainty that is at the heart of doubt. Now, the other solution and practice I've seen for dealing with the hindrance of doubt is taking refuge and relying on faith as an enlightenment factor. When doubt is so intense that mindfulness can't comprehend its object, when doubt is so intense that there's nowhere else to turn, at that point, if we are Buddhist, we can always rely on the triple gem. So in intense doubt, surrender. And if surrender is not sufficient, surrender and take refuge. And I don't usually talk about things from personal experience in this context, but I will say, I will attest that is a very, very powerful teaching. That is a very, very powerful piece of advice, that in a moment of despair, that you rely on the things which are very close to your heart. And if the triple gem is within your heart, then it is a place of refuge for you. And that can help. That factor of faith can actually help through the chaotic torrents of doubt. So, but if your mindfulness is strong, if you're able to release attachment, if you're able to surrender and really be attentive to the process, then the factor of one-pointedness is going to overcome any doubts, any hindrances pertaining to doubt. So in meditation retreats and in the environments that I've taught in, doubt is really an internal process of sabotage. It's based on discursive thinking, and maybe, I'm not sure, it might be more common for Westerners to experience intense doubt on meditation retreats than it would be for people from Thailand or Sri Lanka or India that grew up in a Buddhist culture. But either way, it's coming from purely machinations of thought. And if we're doing the practice correctly, and if we're following the instructions of the teacher, we all know that we are to observe thoughts and not to specifically engage them and entertain them, especially on a meditation retreat. In the Mahasi tradition, if a thought arises, we acknowledge a thought as a thought. And in samatha practice, whether in Pak or in the Dhammakaya tradition or the forest tradition, it's observing the breath to the exclusion of anything else, observing the visualized object to the exclusion of anything else, especially thought. So if we're being overcome by thoughts of doubt, by feelings of doubt, we're allowing the hindrance to overpower us. And if we could surrender and let things pass, we can get through that specific hindrance and reestablish concentration. And really, once that one-pointedness and all the jhana factors have become established, the mindfulness is so powerful that even if doubt was to arise in the mind stream, it wouldn't be able to penetrate awareness and really take hold in the body and in the mind to become a hindrance. So, well, everyone, I know this was short, but I just wanted to go briefly into some of the ways that these hindrances are overcome in the practice. And to summarize, if we're observing the breath, or we're observing the visualized object continuously without interruption on meditation retreats, then these hindrances will be overcome. They will be suppressed by the factors of concentration, the jhana factors. Now, in our ordinary lives, because our mindfulness is not most likely not going to become so collected in the same way that it would on retreats, we have to be flexible and we have to work with these hindrances in more direct ways. For example, on a meditation retreat, your mindfulness may be so strong that doubt is not going to be an issue. But in your life, you're at work and you're dealing with your kids, or you have a specific situation that is arising. It's important to acknowledge doubt as doubt and to see mind states exactly as they are, and to be reflexive and adaptable in dealing with the various things that come up in our lives. If we're able to just be neutral and be equanimous and observe things as they come and go, that's fantastic. And I feel that is always the highest road, to just see body as body, mind as mind, feeling as feeling, really see the aggregates as they are, and without any need to change them. So if doubt was to arise, you just simply observe doubt, the feeling of doubt, as a feeling of doubt, or a thought of doubt as a thought. And to establish mindfulness and continue and remain in that, and hindrances arise and they pass. Negative feelings arise and they pass. All feelings arise and they pass. But of course, when hindrances, when problems become very, very difficult to deal with, and we're not able to take the high road of mindfulness and just observe and be present, there are ways that we can tackle specific problems. For example, sensual desire being an issue for meditators, being an issue for people on the path. If you have a lustful temperament, if your mind is the type of mind that just easily goes to thoughts of sensuality and is lustful, if your mindfulness is fantastic, if your practice is solid, you'll be able to observe this phenomena arise and pass. But if you're being overcome by these thoughts of sensuality, then there are specific remedies for that. One of the contemplations in the teachings is contemplations on repulsiveness, observing a corpse as it decomposes, reflecting on the impermanent nature of the physical body, the disgusting nature of the physical body from the inside, the contemplation of a skeleton. These specific practices are able to help us detach from sensuality. They're able to help us detach from form. Why is it important to detach from sensuality? If we are engrossed in sensuality, the mind will not be able to return, to come in to itself. The mind will not be able to comprehend the objects of attention, the foundations of mindfulness. Sensuality will keep taking up mental bandwidth. It will keep impeding attention and mindfulness. So the inclination that is fueling that tendency, that lustful inclination, can be addressed by doing that specific practice, that specific contemplation. Seeing that form is impermanent, seeing that the body decays, looking at a skeleton, observing a skeleton, right? These specific things help us with sensuality, and they help us let go of our fixation on sense data, on the sense doors, and really allow the mind to turn inward. And in that turning inward, these factors of concentration arise, and those factors of concentration suppress and help us overcome the hindrances in meditation. Well, that was my talk today. It was an honor being able to share this with everyone. If you liked what you saw, smash the like button, please, and share this video. It helps Steve's channel. It helps this group for all of you or those of you who are inspired to actually share the video. It really pumps up the recognition in Facebook algorithms, and it helps people find the Dhamma group. And if you want to reach out to me personally, you can message me on Messenger, on Facebook, or you can go to my website. It's ryanjburton.com. And I would love to come back and share more about meditation or more of what I've experienced personally and what I teach and share with others here. So thank you, everyone.